Hello, I'm Paddy Delaney, and welcome to Integrated Infrastructure, a podcast dedicated to bringing you news and views from industry leaders involved in the development, design, construction and management of the many built forms that make up Australia's integrated infrastructure. This is episode 15 of Integrated Infrastructure, and this week I'm talking to Jeremy Blackwell, General Manager of Building, Airports and Defence at Laing O'Rourke. Jeremy is a highly energetic and inquisitive individual and offers us advice, experience and ideas from a career that spans a diversity of roles, sectors and locations. This week we talk about how Jeremy went from being a Metropolitan Planner in the public service to working for a global building and infrastructure contractor. We talk about leadership and how authentic leadership principles are driven from the top in Laing O'Rourke. We talk about diversity and Jeremy's own personal experience. We talk about how far the industry has come and how much further we need to go in diversity to create a more sustainable industry. We talk about different contracting models and Laing O'Rourke's success with the W2B Delivery Partnership and the New South Wales Bushfires Make Safe and Clean Up programme. Amongst other things, we talk about the benefits of collaboration in these contracts, the opportunity in manufacturing, and the legacy benefits these types of contracts generate for others. Finally, Jeremy tells us why he's excited about the future, and specifically the confluence of urbanisation, infrastructure, and the digital world. There's much more in the podcast, so jump in and listen. I hope you enjoy this week's podcast. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe if you do. So without any further ado, here is my conversation with Jeremy. Jeremy, welcome to Integrated Infrastructure. Thanks ever so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Great, Paddy. Great to be here.
Fantastic. Look, as you know, we're a short form podcast, so we try and keep the pace going. Why don't you start us off with tell us a bit about yourself, who you are and who you work for and what you do.
Yeah, so I'm General Manager for Buildings, Airports and Defence at Laing O'Rourke. And in effect, that's covering those market sectors all pre-contract. The sector strategy, the clients, the pursuits, and then obviously getting into the tenders itself. So that's where I fit within the business. Fantastic.
And you've been there for a couple of years now, is that right?
Yeah, it's actually approaching 5, actually. So,
Okay.
4 heading towards 5. So,
Brilliant.
It's an exciting time.
And let me ask you, how did a Metropolitan Planner come to work for a global building and infrastructure contractor?
Yeah, well, firstly, my background started off in the public sector, actually, with Brisbane City Council, and that was in urban renewal, and that was quite an exciting time. And then it finished up leading a new metropolitan city plan implementation. So quite a different perspective, I would say. But then moved into consulting, the old firm PPK heading into PB, and that's the precursor to WSP in Australia. And exciting and different opportunities around technical, operational, and then business development roles. I think one recurring theme within my PB experience was being in Brisbane, Sydney, Sunshine Coast, Brisbane, Melbourne, then back to Sydney. So geographic diversity together with a lot of role diversity across different market sector leadership roles that included property, government, oil and gas, and non-transport sectors at the end. So there was quite a diverse background, and I think the theme from that career leading into where I am at the moment has been about taking opportunities, both geographic and also technical opportunities, and then moving outside my comfort zone.
Yeah, fantastic. I get the impression that you're a naturally inquisitive person, enjoys looking at different new sort of shiny things and getting stuck in.
I do, and so in a sense, how did I get here? Well, it is that inquisitive nature, and I do ask different questions, and I take the opportunity, and I like actually getting to know clients' businesses and getting deep understanding from which we can then prepare and hopefully tailor different solutions that are quite unique to that client. And my own personal interest is as an urbanist, and I have a passion for infrastructure, a passion for the built environment, and I believe in trying to make places, urban places, more livable. And in my role, I think I can help create that. And there's a strong affiliation with people. I'm a natural extrovert, and so working with clients or working with tender teams and the like is just a natural extension of that personality, I would think.
Yeah, brilliant. And I can see how that desire to be inquisitive and challenge and do new things and find new solutions it plays very well to the Laing O'Rourke culture and philosophy, doesn't it?
Yes, and I was asked to join Laing O'Rourke when the business decided to take a more strategic approach to client engagement and to its work winning function, and I was particularly attracted by being family-owned, a very flat structure that drives accountability, and the business has a strong focus on modern methods of construction, and that is particularly interesting. And we've got, across the industry, there's a range of huge quantity of very smart people who design, deliver our projects, but you don't put me on a site. That's particularly high risk. And my natural habitat is probably working with clients and seeking to understand, as I said, their business, and then fostering a more innovative technical solution and framing those solutions within a lens of client centricity, and that's where I operate, and that's where I add value.
Yeah, fantastic. And we don't know each other very well. We've just got to know each other recently, and I picked up a post that you had put on LinkedIn specifically about leadership. I think it was on the Wear It Purple Day, and you referenced something that happened internally, but then wanted to recognise those people that you felt had been fantastic leaders and mentors for you, which I thought was just wonderful, and it got a lot of attention, and also some great compliments about you personally as well and your style of leadership. I'm keen to understand what does leadership look like to you from an industry and sort of from an individual perspective.
Yeah, I think you need to start off with the premise that people are the most important asset within a business, and within construction, what we ask our people to do and to go out and to deliver is highly complex, often with a high safety profile attached, and we have to make sure that we're a people-focused business and a people-focused industry, and that then means that it's about getting to know your people, those who report to you, but also more broadly. So that's in understanding and engaging with them and trying to develop a trusted relationship with your people. One of the most important skills in that regard is actually listening. And I don't think as an industry we listen enough. And I think there's a lot of good solutions, good ideas that actually come from the bottom up if we pause and listen. And that's followed then by not judging. And that's also important within that people context. Yeah. And then it's about setting your people up for success. If you've got a clear plan and a clear roadmap and you set accountabilities and guardrails for people to work within, then people will actually get on and do it, and they'll get on and prosper. And then finally, I would say that self-awareness as a leader is important, to know where and what that impact that you may have on others. Just need to be cognizant of that. And as a business, I think in these COVID times, which has challenged the industry, but fortunately we've had a license to operate, Laing O'Rourke has taken that thinking and deployed it down really to drive a connection to our people. And that's both an emotional or physical connection, but also a focus on their well-being. And in my own experience with that, I've had a small team, and we started a 15-minute conversation every morning simply as a way to check in. And what that created with that very small group of people was it made it okay to ask for help, to put up the hand and ask a question. And and very small little gestures can actually go a long way. I found it equally rewarding. It's motivating when you've got people eager to have a quick conversation and check in on what's going on and who's doing what. And I think the little things always add up to big things eventually.
It sounds great. It sounds like that comes from the top as well, because I've heard Kyle talk recently about no apologies, no need. If a child walks into your Zoom meeting, it's fine. It's
absolutely.
Everybody's dealing with what they're dealing with, and needs to get through it. And you mentioned authentic leadership in your on your post as well. We're in quite a tough industry, aren't we, in construction and engineering, and sometimes there's quite conflicting needs and priorities. How do you maintain that authentic leadership through, in what's quite a challenging environment?
I think it's driven by, as I said, Laing O'Rourke has a pretty flat structure, so you're never two or three steps away from Cahill. And then secondly, there's a lot of open communication, a lot of different channels that can be used. And in a very dispersed environment as we are at the moment, where we have people in across the homes as well as in the office, it's communication and connecting to people and checking in. And you can do that formally, informally. And then there's also a framework that sits around that, which is actually having a clear business plan. And if you have a clear plan, if you've got a clear direction, yes, you might adjust it, with some externality or some particular shock or something that's arisen. But if you've got a plan, you can actually stick to the plan, you can communicate the plan, and you work the plan. And that's what Laing O'Rourke has been doing over the last 4 years. We've had a very clear plan about where we want to go, and that translates down into the leaders being very clear. And that then translates down to the people actually having strong alignment with that. And I think that's resonated strongly.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to come on and talk about some of the projects that you've been doing recently, but what you just said there definitely resonates with what we've seen sort of out in the markets. It's fantastic. We have talked about diversity a lot on the podcast, and I know you said something that you sort of referenced in a way in your post, and you mentioned your partner Chris, and then it led us to talk after that about sort of all the different types of diversity, in the industry at the moment. How do you see diversity benefiting the industry, and what changes have you seen in the industry in sort of in your years?
Yeah. Well, firstly, just a little bit about me. Yeah, Chris and I have been together for over 20 years now, and it's been quite fun. We've worked interstate, and we've had 7 interstate moves and never left our respective employers at that time. So that's been fantastic. But drilling down to the leaders, there was never actually a label or never actually a banner or a label or anything put upon what the leaders in both my partner's business, which is Laing, one of the biggest beverage companies in Australia, together with PB at the time. There was never a banner or a label. It was about those leaders actually focusing in on the person. And they focused on, help me grow when they looked at my attributes, my skills, etc. But also they coached. They took the time to coach and challenge. And that is where people can grow. And as I said earlier, if you set people up for success with guardrails, directions, accountability, people will prosper. And that's what they've been, those leaders I've been fortunate to work with have shaped that and implemented that style. And I thank each of them greatly because they've actually helped me look at things differently and move outside my comfort zone and develop as a person and as a professional. I just reflect on one example, and this is going way back to Brisbane City Council back in 1996. Hot January, humid day, and my leader was running late to present to the Lord Mayor in Civic Cabinet. And the leader just said, no, you go ahead, you start, you do it. You don't need me to start, you just go and do it. And okay, so I presented to the Lord Mayor, who was particularly grumpy because it's hot and humid, but that little action of actually encouraging and having confidence in me to go and present in front of the Civic Cabinet was a tremendous learning exercise, and it was fantastic. And of course, and it did go well. Everything went well, but it was just a little gesture, and there have been many gestures by many leaders over the years that have actually helped on that journey for me. But coming back to diversity within the industry, it's way too low, and it's not right. So I think something has to change. And part of it is, now in this pandemic-induced depression or recession that we're in, there is an expectation on this industry, on the construction industry, to help rebuild our economy. And that's to deliver the tens of billions of dollars worth of projects that are coming down the pipeline. And that's what our country and our communities need to help us rebuild. But there's one big challenge in all of that, and that is we don't have the resource base, the skilled resource base to deliver those projects. So while there is a pure headcount need actually to get more people in the industry, I actually think it's more about the opportunity to change the culture of the industry by tapping into different resource pools. And by doing that, we'll actually get a more diverse group of people into the construction industry. And going back to one of my earlier comments about asking different questions, I've naturally done that because I've come from a different background. I have a different perspective, different experience, different insights. And asking, and in a sense, my role as being pre-contract gives me the license to ask different questions and challenge constructively the team and ask and keep asking those different questions. So in this pandemic environment, and we've got to rebuild, I get a sense that there's a lot of people out in the community who are looking at the construction industry, and hopefully they will join today and tomorrow and in future years, because we need them. We need them to bring fresh perspectives, bring fresh ideas and fresh solutions, and that will actually intrinsically evolve our industry. And when we do that, we'll actually have people, the best possible solution will actually be created, and that will then benefit our communities far better than what they've done in the past. And we will know then that the solution that we're putting on the table is at its best. And I think from a diversity point of view, where we are starting from a low base, that has changed. It has grown, but I think there's more to go. Then we will be at our best when we expand the depth and range of voices and perspectives around our collective tables. That's when we will actually prosper. And finally, I would say, as an industry, by intrinsically changing, by using more modern methods of construction from old standards and some old outdated thinking, we will actually be able to deliver buildings and infrastructure more efficiently. And through the creation of a modern manufacturing-led construction industry, you actually need a different kind of workforce to make that happen. And then that will actually drive a further evolution inside the industry, and it will ultimately improve productivity. Because not only do we have a diversity problem, we've got a productivity problem.
Yeah, absolutely. This is something that I've touched on a few times, and specifically I spoke to Paul Ferris about it. Paul, he's now, I don't want to get his title wrong, but I think he is now general manager at Coleman Rail, but he was Lend-Lease. But before that, he was Laing O'Rourke alumni. And we were talking about the fact that, yes, we definitely, and he came from the UK coal mining industry and into rail when the coal mining industry shut down in the UK. So he's had that experience of an industry that closed down and then needed to go into one that was diversifying and growing at that point in time. But we were talking about actually the biggest challenge might not be identifying the people that we need to come into the industry. It might not be training the people that we need to come into the industry, but it's actually going to be the convincing a large part of the industry that they can actually recruit and take people on that don't look like the same people that they had yesterday or the day before that. And that's probably the biggest challenge that there is in diversifying.
I think so, and it's also, and it means the leaders needing to perhaps step back and reframe their own thinking in terms of those decisions, how they frame a recruitment notice, or how they frame all of the little things add up to trying to attract a different workforce, and I think also you can start it at the top. I certainly in Laing O'Rourke, there are clear standards and also clear targets for 2025 to change our leadership profile. But then also at the bottom, we're actually achieving far greater than 50%, women in our graduate and internship programs, which is fantastic. And that so I think you can start both ends, and hopefully, you can accelerate and compress and change, because the industry needs it, and our clients need it, our communities need it. So I think we can all start by doing some small things differently.
Yeah, the pace of change in terms of diversity, whether that's around gender or race or any of those other things, it's all going in the right direction. There's such a level of momentum in the industry that's happening. It's that industry of thought that diversity of thought that might be more challenging. So taking somebody who isn't a civil engineer and putting them into a civil engineering environment. And
I think there will always be the need for the engineers to be in engineering roles, because that's just a core part of engineering design and delivery assurance. You actually need that. But there are many roles, there are many functions, there's many other contributions that different people can play. And who may not necessarily be the civil engineer or the structural engineer. But when you merge that together with, say, a data analyst or a data systems expert, you actually not just report on the physical items, you actually take the power of data to look at productivity in a different lens. So there's different ways and different skill sets that I think we should be using. That's just one small example. And we've seen that internally, where on our Bushfires project, we had up to three or four people who were working behind the scenes simply on systems and data.
Yeah, brilliant.
Connecting it, analysing it, interrogating it, looking at it, and then, but that's actually a really important skill set. And I think over time, that example or others will just become commonplace. And there'll be many other different skill sets that we need as well. So, but you've got to have an engineering foundation, because that's what we're doing. We are actually building the built environment. So you can't avoid that.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can complement it with other things.
But I won't labour this point. I mean, the commercial side of the business has been very good at bringing people from a legal background and then training them up into more of a commercial type individual. Even adding in the financial side of things, it'd be interesting to see if somebody can think of or create a way to bring other types of engineers into construction, because net migration is going down. And we're going to have a building boom, an engineering boom, and there aren't enough people as it is. So anyway, let's not labour that, because I was really keen to talk to you about contracts. We hear an awful lot about the profitless boom. We hear an awful lot about risk allocation and contracting arrangements and the incremental steps that seem to be sort of made in those areas. I don't think we hear enough around the sort of successes of things like managed contracts and delivery partnerships. And I know that Laing O'Rourke specifically have had some great projects recently. Firstly with W2B, and then the I'm going to get this right, New South Wales Bushfires Make Safe and Clean Up program, which I think is just coming to its sort of fruition now, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. I'll probably start by talking about the industry first and then come down to those examples, Paddy. So change is essential. And I think, perhaps change is not needed, but transformational change perhaps is what we need. Our industry is in poor health, and there are a number of key challenges. You touched on a couple, and we've discussed a couple of those already. And Australia does need a sustainable industry, and that's to deliver the stimulus that's coming down the pipeline, but also to leverage those economic and social benefits that accrue from building an infrastructure. The Australian construction Constructors Association just last week released their response to the Infrastructure Australia audit. And in that was a reform agenda that talked about the industry ourselves needing to change. And we also have to give credit to many public organisations, procuring organisations around the country who have recognised the industry position and have begun to shift. And we just need to, we encourage that, we applaud that, and we just need that to continue. But as an industry, I think, though, responsibility for change needs to start with ourselves. And no contractor is innocent in terms of how we've behaved. And we need to look at our own behaviours, and we need to change our own behaviours first. And I think then that will then hopefully garner more momentum within that with our stakeholders who are also part of our project life cycle. But one example, really simple example, is how we label each other. So when we use the term subcontractor, it instantly infers a master-servant relationship. Quarantined, and you will do this, buy that, and how, and it's a really one way. Well, if you swap that word to a partner, that opens the conversation to elicit their ideas, at the table together with the head contractor. Well, we all have ideas. The ideas are just not contained within one individual or one firm. So I think everyone listening to this podcast can actually make one simple change, and that could be, let's start by using different labels. Is one example. And there's going to be others, but we need to look at ourselves to drive change. Laing O'Rourke delivers a range of projects using different models across the country. However, just in this example, you've touched on two projects, and the delivery partner and the managing contractor are particular examples, and they're very interesting, and they're also very rewarding for everyone who's involved. So in terms of W2B as a delivery partner, located in northern New South Wales, the $4+ billion project, it is intrinsically a very highly collaborative form of contract and delivery model. And it's got a very unique blend of both having the contractor program management attributes together with managing contractor regime. And the delivery partner was engaged very early and upfront within that scheme. And the focus of the delivery partner was around optimising the infrastructure solution. And you can do that when you actually have scale to actually focus on. And one area, one example was how we drove standardised elements into the design. So, for example, there's over 2,200 bridge precast elements. They were standardised, and that allowed for centralised procurement, centralised production, standard installation methods when you got to site, and then that drove significant program cost safety benefit. But also it will lead into a more efficient whole-of-life maintenance perspective on those assets as well. And those efficiencies and those benefits in the design and also in the approval phase and then cascading into delivery, they're just non-existent using a more traditional adversarial form of contract. That's just one example of W2B being a very strong example of a collaborative form of contract.
And that's a good example. That's a good example of what you were talking about manufacturing as well, weren't you? About looking at construction to manufacturing process. That absolutely is a great example of that as well, isn't it?
Yeah, and we see that changing, and we see that growing within the industry, and we want the industry to evolve to being more a manufacturing-led construction industry. Bit of a mouthful, but that in itself changes the paradigm of what we do and how we do it. The bushfires, different model again, managing contractor, and we can all appreciate in January 2020, only 9 months ago, tremendous bushfires. There was a drought last year. There still is a drought in Western Australia, in western parts of the country. Tremendous impact on communities and the natural environment from that bushfire disaster, really. And if that community recovery response required a fast-track procurement, and all accolades need to go to New South Wales Public Works Advisory for being courageous in adopting a fast-track procurement that was all done and dusted within a week, and then actually having a form of contract that's appropriate, highly appropriate for this form of work. And so they need to be recognised for their decisions. The project has been delivered in what would say we're very proud to call a genuine partnership. And we work very closely with PWA. Members were embedded, some of their staff were embedded within our team, and we're actually fostering that close working relation, which is fantastic. And because of this model, we've actually been blown away by the capability and the professionalism of the tens of small businesses at much lower levels in the supply chain. So we were able to clear 3,500 properties in less than 200 days, and we engaged over 90 small businesses, small and medium-sized businesses, and 99% of them were local or regional to regional New South Wales, which is absolutely fantastic. And we were able to deliver this because we had a very collaborative form of contract, and we're actually accessing a whole different level of the supply chain that's got latent capacity. So if we are able to access that market capacity if we look at a different procurement route and form of contract. And that's what I'll be encouraging different delivery agencies, procuring agencies around the country. We have a challenge, but there's an opportunity. And you can access that opportunity by using a different form of contract, a different procurement route. And coming back to these local businesses, they actually challenged us to rethink some of our processes, our systems and tools. So we've learned, we've simplified, standardised, put it through a digital portal, and they shouldn't need to change. We need to change to enable to access them. And we did that successfully. And again, an outstanding result in Indigenous employment with over 40 million of direct Indigenous procurement, over 180 or 13% of the workforce were Indigenous, blowing away all of the targets that were expected. And we've been able to help supercharge that economic recovery in these regions. And I think we can all learn from that. And as I said earlier, by looking at a different model, a different procurement route, and being willing and able to listen and learn from who you're working with, there's actually a legacy that comes out of it. And one of the legacies, there have been many, but one of the legacies has been that those small businesses that we're engaged have got new skills, new capability. Maybe it's a safety system, maybe it's an environment management system or whatever. They've picked up that capability and now they're ready for hopefully a bigger project in the future. And that is a skills legacy that you get. And the managing contractor really drives that hard and is quite an efficient model in getting those big benefits. And I'd also finish by saying the defence managing contractor suite of contracts really provides industry leadership and is probably best practice because you've got the detailed and rigorous planning phase, which is where design is developed from behind 5% all the way through. You've got strict gateways, you've got strict accountabilities, and that drives assurance and it drives control, and particularly to time and cost and quality outcomes that the owner is seeking. And then in delivery, big focus on collaboration, innovation, driving local industry participation, and also workforce development. And that's where you can put targets on diversity going back to an earlier conversation, you can put targets into a DP, a managing contract, formal contract, and drive to get different outcomes. Under a more traditional hard dollar formal contract, you can, but it's probably not as efficient to do that.
Yeah, and your drivers are different. You mentioned defence there. It's something that we're very busy with at the moment, which I think the government as a whole has done. The federal government has done a fantastic job at accelerating those programs of work, and we're very thankful for it as a business. I can say that, which is great.
And we're thankful too, because we're seeing that across the country with projects, and defence are regional. They are located across the country. There's a direct nexus between Commonwealth expenditure and boots on the ground, literally. Yeah. So we applaud what Defence is doing, and they're taking a leadership position on a range of fronts, and we applaud that and thank them for doing that as well.
Yeah, likewise, absolutely. Look, we're a short form podcast. I just want to, firstly, before I ask you this final question, just say thank you. Thank you ever so much for coming on and joining me on the podcast. It's great to hear about your background, about your experience, your thoughts about the industry, and about Laing O'Rourke as well. So really appreciate you spending the time with us this morning. Just as a final question, it's the one we always end on, and we're always interested to know, what our guests are excited about at the moment. What are you looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to the future, Paddy, because in the future, I see a future for our cities, in particular, the confluence of both urbanisation, infrastructure and digitalisation will actually transform place and how we live, work and play. That's exciting. And the construction industry is at the centre of that by converting the theory into the practical built environment. And that's the built environment for tomorrow. So that's what I'm really excited about.
Yeah, fantastic. We chose not to use built environment as a phrase on the podcast. We went for integrated infrastructure, funnily enough. Thank you, Jeremy. I've really enjoyed talking to you today, and hopefully we can come back and have a chat to you again in the future, and see if some of these thoughts about the industry have come to fruition. I'm sure that some of them certainly will. So thank you ever so much, and talk to you again soon.
Cheers, Paddy.
Integrated Infrastructure is powered by North Search, specialists in executive and technical search across engineering, design, construction, property and energy markets in Australia. If you'd like to find out more about North Search or get involved with this podcast, you can click on the links in the show notes or email me directly at the address on the screen. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Integrated Infrastructure. Please tell your friends and colleagues if you did, and we hope to see you again soon.